You're tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. This podcast will contain strong language and spoilers for decades-old media properties.
Join us.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast where we examine pop culture franchises of the VHS era and improv news stories, where all our improvs are yes and, but never no but. So we can have fun imagining how we might improve our favorite movies, TV, and games. I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we were Raised by Rentals. Mike! After all the hate we hated in that last episode, I think it's time for some feel-good, family-friendly fun. What do you say?
I agree. I think last time we got all that out of our systems, it's back to being, nice family men now.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe it's time for a PG-13 installment of Raised by Rentals. I feel like it's been a while since we did that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Weekend at Bernie's too, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that's like a soft R with all the zombie death.
Right. Yeah, I think we definitely added. Well, and there's the whole sex with a corpse thing in the original. So it's it got a little
maybe
dark.
maybe not such a soft R. Oh man. But hey, you know what? Every once in a while when we're poking around looking at movies from the VHS era, trying to come up with ideas for new episodes, we're always like, well, what about this idea? What about that idea? And we'd love to do horror, but we don't want to always get pigeonholed into doing that. And a couple of times over the course of doing the show the last couple of years, we have reminded ourselves, or we've been reminded about whole genres or trends in movies that we like completely forgot about because you don't really see them anymore. Like, for example, when we did our episode on Monopoly, that we were like, we completely forgot about this whole subgenre of movies that was like the social activism film.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Save the Youth Center.
Yeah. That was our Mr. Monopoly's Neighborhood episode. Yeah, and that's come up a few other times where it's like, yeah, like, I remember they used to make movies like that. Like, whatever happened to those types of movies? And the movie we're going to talk about today is exactly that type, at least it was for me. When we first thought about it, it was like, oh, yeah, cool. It's just like a silly 80s comedy. Right, but which is, of course, Harry and the Hendersons.
Yep. And
when I think of Harry and the Hendersons, I think of like those types of sort of family-friendly, slapsticky types of comedy, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I think it's a perfect example of another movie that like hits the same beats in terms of the type of comedy, right? Or like Big, and it's kind of a heartstring puller, But what Harry and the Hendersons did that I completely forgot about until I watched it, recently for preparing for the podcast was the environmental activism movie. Now, do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Like, the first thing that sprang to mind was Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
I fucking loved that movie as a kid.
Oh, hell yeah. And then I thought, I feel like there used to be more movies like this. It was back in the 80s and 90s before climate change was a huge political topic. And you would just have these movies where, it kind of like, Captain Planet on TV, where it was like people were trying to educate audiences about environmental issues. And so you had in the 80s, like Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. What do? They save the fucking whales.
Yep.
Right? And then
that was totally a thing in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, you had Gorillas in the Mist, right, with Diane Fossey and the Gorillas, and right, like it was sort of like it was like this preservationist kind of message, right, about endangered species and whatnot. And then even something like Medicine Man with Sean Connery and Lorraine Bracco, where of course that's about like save the rainforest, And I forgot that Harry and the Hendersons very much has this angle because Harry, who is a Sasquatch, he's Bigfoot, right? He is a vegetarian. He doesn't like to kill. He's upset with the human characters for hunting, and of course, he wants to get out of the big city and go back home. And the family who support him, the Hendersons, they want to take him somewhere safe. They don't want people to exploit him. They don't want people to find him. And I'm like, I totally forgot that this movie kind of had this, this preservation of like endangered species kind of message.
Yeah. I mean, granted, Harry is like, fuck them fish. He don't care about the fish.
Well,
But
fish are tasty.
Yeah, as far as beef and venison and stuff, no, it's not allowed.
Oh man. But yeah, so I thought Harry and the Hendersons, it's a great example of this, mid to late 80s type of family friendly comedy. It's got some great silly but great effects as well. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed, the Bigfoot, the mask, the animatronic face, and all the silly expressions. Like Rick Baker was the special effects leader on this movie, which I wouldn't have expected until I saw his name in the credits.
Yep. I knew that only because I remembered another podcast talking about Rick Baker, and they were like, hey, he even did freaking Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. And I was like, oh yeah, shit, I forgot about that. But so it's stuck in my brain since hearing that on a podcast. But I agree. Harry is such a cool looking character. Visually, he's striking while still kind of being cute and cuddly. But also when he when he shows his teeth, like he has the ability to look menacing, which is kind of hard to pull off. To make something that is instantly cute and cuddly, but also could be menacing.
Yeah, I think so. I even today when I was watching the movie again a little bit, there's a little bit of tension when Harry is in the Hendersons' house where you're never quite sure if he's going to hug you or hit you.
Yeah. Especially at first, like when that first, like that encounter where you see the flashlight spinning after, oh my God, was it George? Was that his name? The
George,
dad.
Yep.
Yes. When George falls over and he drops the flashlight and you see it spinning and you see the shadow of Harry moving by the fridge. And then like he finally looks over and he's just standing there eating at the fridge. It's kind of spooky, like that's a really cool shot, but then immediately it gets fun and silly.
Yeah, exactly. And then at some point he's watching old sitcoms on TV and like laughing hysterically, and it's like, okay, this is a silly movie.
Right.
But we wanted to do a sort of family-friendly movie, like I said, after the dark topics that we had with our Escape from New York, Escape from LA episode, and then the very heated debate we had about The Last Jedi, and we did The Weekend at Bitey's, like we already mentioned, where there was like sex with a corpse and lots of zombie murders, and and then we went on a rental rant where I was really sick and I was just like, you know what? Fuck everything.
Yeah, we were kind of salty for a little while. So, but yeah, family friendly, movie kind of cleansed the palate. And I do have to say, I have not seen Harry and the Hendersons in easily 20 years, probably longer.
Same.
And first of all, I forgot how long it was. I forgot it was almost a freaking 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
It's quite a trek. But also like I forgot just how nice it is. Like it's just a good movie. Like it's a family friendly feel good flick. Like, yeah, there's a lot of shit that don't make any sense. And right off the bat, there's shit that don't make sense. But it's it's close your mind, like just tune all that shit out and enjoy what's on the screen. It's a fun flick. And I had a lot of fun watching it. I'm like, wow, I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did.
Yeah, same here. Like I said, I mentioned Honey, I Shrunk the Kids being similar in terms of the type of comedy. And it's the same type of thing where it's like, look, don't question it. Don't look for the plot holes. Don't ask what if. Just turn your brain off and enjoy it and go along with the wackiness and enjoy the ride. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with this movie. And I'm a fan of some of the actors in the movie, and we'll kind of get into that. But like, I'm a fan of John Lithgow. I'm a fan of Melinda Dillon. So like immediately I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a good time. And of course, when I was reminded that Kevin Peter Hall plays Harry, I was like, oh, the fucking Predator is in this movie. I love this. To the point where, we'll kind of get into what we're going to do today for the improv. This was an idea that you brought to the table. But while I was watching the movie and, picturing tall ass Kevin Peter Hall inside the Harry suit, I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I wonder if Mike would want to go along with Predator and the Hendersons as an episode concept.
Oh my god, that would have been really funny.
But then I thought, no, we've already done like multiple episodes about like Predator and Alien stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll hang off.
That's funny.
But let's just do kind of like facts and figures about Harry and the Hendersons, kind of get that out of the way for anyone who isn't familiar with the movie or needs a reminder, because you also haven't seen it in 20 years. But we're going to talk about it, Mike, and then I'll toss you the mic, Mike, so you can let us know what you were thinking in terms of like, why did we pick this for the episode? Like, what was the story we thought would be fun? So,
all right.
Right off the bat, 1987, rated PG. I don't think we've done too many PG movies. Didn't go back and check the facts on our episode stats, but I would venture to say we have not gone into too many places where movies were PG.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Probably not. The movie was directed by William Deere, who I guess he must have been kind of a big deal in Hollywood, or at least at the studio at the time, because man, his name was all over the credits and, like very prominently displayed, multiple different places. They even gave credit to his like personal assistants and staff in the credits. I noticed for some reason, but he hasn't made that many movies, but he's made at least a couple that I'm a big fan of. Probably most notably outside of Harry and the Hendersons would be that he directed Angels in the Outfield with a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Danny Glover. He also did If Looks Could Kill with Richard Grieco.
I loved that movie when I was younger. I don't know why.
Oh, it's so dumb, but yeah, I mean, it's a fun movie. It's like, what was that movie? Stone Cold with Brian Bosworth. Yeah. God, what a horrible, cheesy movie, but I love it.
There are that was just an 80s and 90s thing, dude. I'm sure there are kids that have that with 2000s movies, but there were so many movies that you look back and like, wow, this is fucking dumb. But why did I love it so much as a kid?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, I couldn't figure out exactly what he did, but he did some kind of work on the Rocketeer script, which is cool. Lots of TV shows, and then the other movie that he did that I completely forgot existed. I had a total memory unlocked for a movie that I used to have taped off of TV. I used to watch it a lot when I was a teenager because it's from the 90s, but I totally erased it from my memory, which is Wild America. Do you remember this movie? It came out in 1997 with Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Devon Sawa when they were like teenagers. And it's the true story of a guy whose name I can't remember, who later was the host of the nature show called Wild America from the 80s. And it's a fictionalized story about when they were kids and how they got into being obsessed with animals. It's sort of this adventure film about a couple of kids being kind of like alone in the wilderness with bears. But I don't know why, but man, I forgot this movie existed. But damn, I used to watch it all the time, and it's a lot of fun. It's definitely my favorite Jonathan Taylor Thomas vehicle.
I'm looking at it right now, like I'm watching the little like trailer silently, and like this is sparking memories. So like I'm sure I watched it, but I have no memory of the plot. Like, but some of these scenes, I'm like, shit, I remember seeing that. So, like, I probably watched it on TV.
Right? I forgot Devon Sawa was in it, too, even when I didn't remember it existed. But anyway, so William Deere, I guess he did a couple of things, but he hasn't really been around in a while. But as you mentioned before, George, the main character, George Henderson, is John Lithgow. You got to love John Lithgow.
He's good in everything.
And we could go on and on. He's been in fucking everything, right? Mm-hmm. Probably most famous for Third Rock from the Sun. Also, Lord Farquaad from Shrek. People know his voice, maybe more than his face. He was in Footloose in the 80s. He was the villain in Cliffhanger. I love him as a villain.
He's so good.
Oh, my favorite villain that he does, and this says a lot about the kind of movies that I enjoy, but in Santa Claus the movie, when he's the evil toy maker.
Yes. Oh man. He's one of those actors though who's in everything. Like when Jess was watching Dexter, I was surprised that he was in. I was like, oh shit, John Lithgow's in this. Like I don't know. I think he plays Dexter's like one of the villains or something that Dexter's after. I forget who he was. But he pops up all the time and stuff. Like he played Judd in the remake of Pet Sematary, and as much as that movie gets shit, he was phenomenal. I loved him in that movie. And I have to mention this, but Third Rock from the Sun, like I was not a huge watcher of Third Rock. However, it had both him and William Shatner. And both of them famously were in the same episode of The Twilight Zone. William Shatner was in the There's Something on the Wing original, and John Lithgow was in the movie version of that story. And there's a scene in Third Rock, and I remember because as a kid, I was a fan of The Twilight Zone. I loved the movie. I had seen both of those, the original Shatner one and the film. And I'm watching Third Rock casually with, I think my dad was watching it. And the giant head or whatever William Shatner's character was shows up and they're like, "Oh, how was your flight?" And he's like, "It was great, except there was something on the wing." And John Lithgow's character went, "That happened to me too." And I fucking lost it. I was like, I remember that joke.
Yes, I remember that joke. That was so good.
It was one of those, like, I wonder how many people watching that show got that reference, but it was such a good one.
Oh, it was so good. And IMDb reminded me of another like early role for John Lithgow, and I'm not sure how many people listening to this would have seen this movie because it's also an early vehicle for Robin Williams, one of his earliest serious non-comedic roles, which was The World According to Garp from 1982.
Oh yeah,
do you remember that movie?
Yes.
And the only reason I mentioned
it in many years, but you know.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time either. Yeah, sorry. I read the book. The book is extremely bizarre. It's a John Irving book. It's extremely, extremely bizarre. But my favorite short story I think ever of all time is actually a short story that Robin Williams' character Garp writes in the book, and then they print the entire story. And it's about a guy who encounters a bear riding a bicycle in a hotel, which sounds crazy, but holy shit! It's called the Pension Grillparzer, and it's fucking great. So if anyone is listening to this and is like, "What the fuck is this weirdo talking about?" Just Google the Pension Grillparzer. Pension is spelled like pension. I forget what language it is, but it means like hostile. But anyway, but I mentioned the movie now because John Lithgow plays a transgender character in The World According to Garp way back in 1982, and it's very like, you know, of the moment and very political now. But I'm like, man, people have been like fighting this fucking battle for decades when all the way back in the early 80s, you know, it's a character who is you know, discriminated against for being transgender. But man, John Lithgow really, he nails that role. He does it so well. But anyway, Nancy Henderson is the mother in this movie, played by Melinda Dillon, who I absolutely love because my all-time favorite movie of forever is A Christmas Story, where of course she is mom, and she's also in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, an excellent Spielberg movie.
Little side note, I just gotta say that woman plays an amazing mom, and every time she plays, like she just exudes that mom-like quality. And this movie, I was like, yeah, she's in the right role. You know, yes, it fits her so well.
She has kind of a distinctive voice too. If you listen to it when she talks, you mentioned her being a mom. You know how moms sometimes they talk and they go like this, and, "Oh, honey," and their voice kind of goes up a register. She does that, and it's like as soon as she's talking, I'm like looking at the screen, you know, picturing her as the mom from Christmas Story, like, "Oh, Ralphie."
Exactly.
Oh, I love her, but there are also two kids, the Henderson children, Sarah and Ernie. Sarah played by Margaret Langreck. I really couldn't find anything else that she had done. A few other roles, but like nothing memorable. It doesn't look like she stuck around in Hollywood. Ernie, he was on TV in a bunch of stuff, you know, playing these sort of like nerdy kid roles. But I was reminded today by IMDb that he plays the ghost kid Billy Mahoney in Flatliners, who tortures Kiefer Sutherland while he's like temporarily dead. And I'm like, okay, that kid is creepy as fuck.
Well, I gotta say, like, I know we haven't gotten quite to the movie yet, but I gotta comment, that kid was creepy in this. He was a bloodthirsty little maniac.
Yes.
Like he was like all about death and destruction until Harry won his heart, you know? It's like,
Exactly. I think the thing that he says most often in the movie is, "Shoot it, Dad."
right.
Oh man, he's a little weirdo. Okay, I didn't recognize David Suchet from anything, who plays Jacques, the Bigfoot hunter. He's kind of the bad guy. Lainey Kazan plays Irene, the next door neighbor, who basically plays the exact same character who is the mom from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, who I love.
Yep.
And then the wonderful late great Don Amici plays Dr. Wrightwood, who is like the Sasquatch expert. And if you don't know Don Amici, of course, he's in Trading Places and Cocoon, Heaven Can Wait, and then just decades of great comedies in Hollywood.
Mhm.
But okay, so that's kind of it in terms of facts and figures. You know, the plot of the movie is that the Hendersons are on a camping trip. George and Ernie are there to hunt, and they're just obsessed with their rifles. Shoot it, Dad. um, and George is the sort of like know-it-all outdoorsy type. They're racing down the mountain from Mount Rainier Park in Washington State, and they hit what they at first think is a bear. It turns out to be Harry the Sasquatch, who essentially Bigfoot. They hit him with their car. They strap him to their car because they think he's dead. They drive him home to their house in Seattle, where of course he's not dead. And he wakes up and he does that thing you mentioned where he's like raiding the fridge and scares the shit out of George in the middle of the night. And then essentially, he just kind of goes on a rampage. He's a big, giant animal, like a wild creature, terrorizing and destroying their house and their neighbors and their pet dog. And eventually they kind of warm up to him. The Hendersons, they warm up to him. They realize that he's a lot more intelligent and gentle than they had realized. He's horrified by the taxidermy and the other trophies that George has in the house from hunting. So they realize that he doesn't want to kill other animals. He actually buries animals, or encourages the Hendersons to do that. But then at some point George wants to return him to the woods, but Harry escapes and he's running around in what I guess is supposed to be Seattle, even though it looks like a little town in the movie. So I'm not sure where they filmed it. It's definitely not big ass city Seattle. But he's essentially, running wild for a while. All the townsfolk are spotting him often enough where eventually there's like a armed mob that takes to the streets to try to hunt down the Bigfoot on the loose. George goes out to find him successfully. They encountered this hunter Jacques, who has been trying to hunt and kill a Bigfoot for 20-something years. And they also meet up with Dr. Wrightwood, who is the Sasquatch expert and has like a Bigfoot museum and store. And long story short, they get Harry back to the woods, back to where he came from. They confuse and lead Jacques off the trail. Eventually Harry and Jacques have an encounter, but instead of Jacques the hunter killing Harry, being the gentle soul that he is, gives him a hug and a handshake, and everybody's friends at the end. And Harry wanders off into the midst of the forest. But wait, there's other Bigfoot. Oh no, he had a whole family all along. And happy ending.
Exactly. Quick side note. I got a comment when you talked about the townsfolk grabbing the arms and going off looking for Bigfoot. How many times did we see that in the 80s and 90s? Like, there's always, it's like a trope at this point where like the townsfolk get weapons. Like, it just happens all the time.
Yeah, it was like the townsfolk with the pitchforks going up to Frankenstein's castle.
Exactly. Oh my god. But yes, so very happy ending. And I had pitched to you originally an idea that I was just calling Hardcore Harry. Which could be taken in two different ways, but no, we're going an action route. So the idea of like, what if it was an action movie starring Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. How would we do that? How would we make Harry an action star? And of course, in our texting back and forth, it got brought up. The Rambo bandana has to happen because look, fucking Gizmo even did it. So it's just a staple for the 80s. So at some point he will have to have a bandana. But yeah, so the idea is, how do we do a soft, like a PG-13 kind of family-friendly action film with Harry from Harry and the Hendersons?
Yeah, and as soon as you had mentioned, he at one point you were like, oh, he's got to go on a rampage against somebody, somebody who's like endangering, where he lives, and he's going to go all Rambo style with the red bandana. And I'm like, dude, I am in. I don't even know what we're going to do. I haven't even seen this movie in 20 years, but I don't care. Like, we're doing this because I want to see a Bigfoot with a fucking Rambo bandana on going hog on some fools.
Exactly.
Oh, man, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Just to jump right in, I think we need a starting point. You mentioned Harry's family. I think that this is where we start. His family has to be in danger. One thing I want to bring up at the start here that I think would just be an interesting little character development moment is, I've always heard people say in the search for Bigfoot, they've always said, like, why don't we find any Bigfoot corpses? Like, clearly, if there were an entire species out there, we would find their corpses. Well, we see in Harry and the Hendersons, he buries the dead. So these Sasquatches have some kind of drive to bury their dead. So that's why we're never finding them, is because, like, well, they're fucking taking care of their corpses, much like human beings. So what if we open just kind of with a sad, somber moment? We see that there were 2 adult Bigfoot and a little baby Bigfoot at the end of Harry and the Hendersons. So what if one was his wife? So kind of like Chewbacca. Like, we'll use the Star Wars holiday special as a as like a baseline here, where Chewie had a wife, a dad, and a kid. Maybe it's the same thing.
Okay.
So one of them is his wife, one of them is his like elderly father that lives with them, and one is their kid. So we start the movie with, like, maybe we see where they live in the woods. Like we like it's this really deep in the forest type of thing, and we see them kind of like, little tear rolling down their face. They're saying goodbye to, like, dad. He passed away, and they're burying him, and they're like putting flowers over the grave and all that, because again, this is stuff we saw Harry do in part 1. So, but I want to see, like, where they live. So, like, somewhere real deep in the woods. And I know you had mentioned when we were talking off the air, like his obsession with flowers. So we gotta make sure we do something with that, because he ate the corsage. He was constantly like grabbing flowers and eating them. So we should have something with, like, maybe it's like a Disney princess kind of thing, where there's just flowers everywhere, like a very beautiful, hidden away in the woods kind of magical land.
Yeah, the flowers should be like, they should be bright pink, or they should be like white with like pink polka dots on them, like something like really, distinctive.
Like unique.
Yeah. I think that would be fun. And part of the reason why I had brought that up is I was like, we need something special about where Harry lives. And because if we're going to do like an action movie, I think one of the tried and true formats for an action movie is that it's like, don't mess with my family,
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you have your movies like Commando, where they kidnap like Schwarzenegger's daughter, or like Walking Tall, or Death Wish, or something where it's like they're messing with my family. So and we had mentioned he should have like this wife and kid, and I think, okay, so something special about where they live that would make somebody, like, or whoever our villain is, and of course I have an idea, but make somebody want to like intrude, or want someone to mess with his family, because they're barging into this area where these Sasquatches live.
Okay, yeah. Well, what's I know you said you have an idea there, so yeah, let's hear it. Let's just go right into it.
Yeah, so while I was watching Harry and Hendersons, I watched part of it again today, just trying to refresh my memory, and I noticed something, a little detail, but part of the plot of the last act of the movie is you see Jacques the Hunter who is chasing the Hendersons with Harry out of town because, of course, he's hunting Harry. He's the one guy in the armed mob, who was successful in chasing them down. And as the Hendersons are leaving the city, you see a sign that they're going to Mount Rainier National Park. And I hadn't noticed it, or if they had mentioned it before, but that's like inland in Washington State. Like I looked it up on a map because I'm not that familiar with the area. But, and then you watch them drive off, and it's like giant trees and mountains as far as the eye can see. They got redwoods in that area. And then I just thought, oh, well, the absolute perfect villain that you would find not in the city where we found Jacques, but in the woods would be like sorry, hang on a second. What is the word I'm trying to think of?
Logging company?
Yeah, I was gonna think of something else. Sorry. Yeah, would be like a logging company, right? But of course, because this is an action movie, we got to have a villain. There's got to be some kind of like crooked guy, who's in charge of the logging company, who for some reason, they're going to intrude onto like, the Sasquatch Eden that we see in this opening sequence.
Okay, yeah, so they're just like breaking codes and like logging where they shouldn't be, type of thing. Like the total Captain Planet villain.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like maybe, there's some kind of restriction for where they're allowed to be logging or how much they're allowed to be, but for some reason, these guys are corrupt, so they're like, oh, we're going to break our quota because we got to make that sweet cash, or right. The concept of these flowers, maybe they find this area where these flowers are, and somehow the flowers are special. I don't know, maybe it could be like a medicine man thing where the flowers have some kind of like medicine or compound in them that like, oh, now the flowers are more valuable than the wood from the trees. Or maybe it's like an endangered species and like, oh, they're not supposed to be there, but they're going to log it anyway because, the trees equal cash, something like that.
I like that idea. I like the idea of just like, especially you mentioned the quota thing, because there's always that thing, and I know I unfortunately see this firsthand at the hospital all the time, where there's like the like we have to come in under budget, and if you come in under budget, then they get a bigger bonus. So there's always going to be like that. Oh, if you come in over quota, you'll get a bigger bonus. So you'd mention them like just like deforesting like crazy. They go into this area that, maybe they don't know why it's restricted. It's just, this is a preservation area. And it could just be as simple as this specific type of flower is endangered, or it only grows in the right environment. So there's no logging there. And they're just like, fuck all that. These are some big ass trees. We're going to take them. So they come in and start exactly. logging in that area. But this idea, like we're building this evil Captain Planet style bad guy of just like, fuck your forests. Yes. I want him to be played by Michael Ironside. I feel like he would be the perfect 80s villain.
Yes, of course. We've used Michael Ironside before, but he's like so great. When you need a guy to just be like, fuck your forest, like
yes, Michael Ironside.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I like that idea too. Let's have it be exactly that he's the foreman or the head, the executive or whatever of this logging company. And like to your point, they've met their quota, but he's like fudging the books to make it look like, they're allowed to keep logging. They haven't felled as many trees on paper as they have, in real life. So they're going to keep going because, again, this is like redwood. So it's, valuable. And yeah, they come across this, this Sasquatch Eden, or to them, it's just like, oh man, look at all these flowers. And there should be somebody on the crew, and every movie villain has to have some fucking nerd who's got like the laptop it was like a fancy technology in the late 80s and he's thinking like, I don't know, boss, like we're not supposed to be here, we're outside of the boundaries, and this is like a national preserve for this endangered species of, it's like the spotted strawberry lily or whatever. And then of course right. Michael Ironside's like, did I ask you for details? Like let's get the crew started. Like he doesn't give a shit about the goddamn flower.
I don't know why, but for just for the sake of making it easier, like with Michael Ironside's character, I was trying to think of a name, and the first name that came to mind was Burke. I don't know why, but Burke. What do you think about Burke?
Like yeah,
maybe because of
I like
Bark. Because of Bark.
Okay. So let's keep that going. So his like bespectacled like little nerd guy who's like who's always giving him the facts and figures, boss. Like this guy. Let's see. So if Burke is from Bark, this guy's name is Leif, like Leif Erikson.
Yes.
Or Leaf, or how do you say that? Yeah, that's him.
So the nerdy
Leaf.
guy is Leif Erikson. Leaf, yeah. Leaf Garrett, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Leaf Garrett. Okay, so obviously, the loggers are going to come in, and we got to see some sequence where we pan back into the trees, and like you see Harry and his family and the other Sasquatch, and they're like, "Oh no!" Of course, it's very much like the Star Wars Holiday Special. It's like there's going to be a whole lot of like grunting and groaning as they're trying to communicate with like facial expressions and stuff to the audience. That essentially what they're saying is like, "Oh no, our table, it's broken."
So yeah, we'll do the thing where we open it with the funeral, like the funeral for Grandpa Sasquatch, and then we hear the like the chainsaws in the distance, and we cut over to, and then we'll introduce Burke and Leaf and all that, and have them do the whole thing that you just said, like with the the endangered flower. Like, we can't do it, we can't log here, blah blah blah. And we get into that. So yeah, have the Sasquatches come running back to their little like fairy tale land that we were talking about. What did you call that earlier?
The Sasquatch Eden.
That's what it was, Sasquatch Eden. So we have them come running back, and so, yeah, they'll be hiding behind the trees, like watching. Now, I mean, we should have like, so the nerdy guy, do we want him to be like the guy with the conscience, or do we want to have like one logger, or maybe even a couple, like, I don't know, boss, this seems kind of wrong, like we shouldn't be here. Like he kind of is maybe like the toady with the heart of gold. Like,
no, I want him to just be, he's the toady who is he's going along with it, because he's the guy who's aiding and abetting,
so he's the yes man.
Yeah, he's an enabler, you know what I mean? Like, because he wants to get paid too, and he's the smart guy who's gonna, cook the books and make it work for Burke, and and of course, Burke's calling the shots. So I like this idea that there should be some humans, because again, thinking about the Star Wars Holiday Special, we don't really want to have a movie where we have nothing but like Wookiees growling for an hour.
Just an hour and a half. Exactly. Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, so there should be a crew that comes in, one of these like chainsaw crews of 3, 4, or 5 guys, and they get to work, and let's have 1 or 2 of them. They notice the flowers, and they're like, yeah, like, I don't know, boss, like, are we supposed to be up here? Like the one guy with like the very typical like thick New York Italian accent, and and of course you have Michael. This is where we get to see Burke. He kind of be menacing and lean in and be like, you'll do whatever I say, or whatever. I'm not good with the dialogue. Off
if
the top
you
of my
want a
head,
paycheck, you'll cut that damn tree down, like that type of thing.
Exactly, right. And but there should be another guy on the crew who, like, maybe he doesn't say anything, but he's the guy where he's the one with the heart of gold, and like, he's not going to say anything yet, because he's not going to speak up and confront his boss that he obviously realizes is crooked. But we'll do that thing where the camera zooms in on his face where he's looking real serious, watching Burke walk away, and that he doesn't feel good about it. And like, this guy, I think, would be our POV character, the guy who can talk for us. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he'll encounter Harry or something, but he's the guy where we're going to learn shit from.
I like it. Okay, so all right, let's come up with a name for him.
All right, let me try and think. So the first thing I thought of is like, do we want to have this be some kind of like known actor? Like, because of course, if we're going to do an action movie with Harry, the low hanging fruit, the obvious is like, oh, well, let's pick some like 80s action star, like a Jean-Claude Van Damme or a Dolph Lundgren or somebody, to kind of have them, be like the star power in this movie.
Not quite Stallone or Schwarzenegger, but adjacent.
Yeah, exactly. Wait. Sorry,
Yeah.
you go first. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, like, I'm trying to think of other action stars of that era. I mean, obviously you got people like Bruce Willis, but he wasn't really that high up on the list. He kind of just had the Die Hard stuff. Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to think of other people.
See, and I'm going back to that Predator comment that I made before, because the first thing I thought was the action movie Schwarzenegger Predator. That movie is full of action stars. It's like a crew of the most roided out, like the machoest guys ever to be filmed. You know,
Right.
but like, you know, you have like Bill Duke and, you know, fucking Jesse the Body, but like these guys would be too much. You want somebody who's in shape because this is like a lumberjack, but you don't want, you know, somebody who's just like muscle on muscle on muscle. Like, it wouldn't be realistic. And so I think the perfect choice is we do Carl Weathers.
Oh, fuck. Yes. Okay, yes, I like that. Because again, dude's beefy as hell, but he also kind of seems silly and like he could do a family movie, no problem.
Yeah,
like
you think about him later on in, what was he in? Was he in Billy Madison?
Yes, or no? Was it Happy Gilmore or Billy? One of those two.
Oh, Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, he was definitely in a Adam Sandler movie. I remember that. And obviously, like, you know, before he passed away, sadly, he was in The Mandalorian. He was fucking great in that. Like, he was just a damn good actor. Fuck, do you remember Action Jackson?
Hell yeah, dude. I mentioned that one of our other episodes is like one of my like favorite underrated 80s action movies. Dude, I fucking love that movie.
It's so fun.
Yeah, and like if we look at the calendar, and if Harry and the Hendersons came out in 87, like this would be perfect because Predator came out around the same time. Action Jackson is 88. So we could do this sequel where it slots in like right before or after Action Jackson, where we start to see Carl Weathers, you know, his star rise a little bit as an action star. But, you know, to your point, he's got comedic chops, and like honestly, you want this to be kind of an everyman, right? Because he's the POV character. And of all the guys in Predator, like I could picture Carl Weathers as like, you know, he could be like your high school principal. You know what I mean? He could be like your buddy at work. Like, he's got the face where, you know, he's not just all cheekbones, you know?
Right. And I mean, I can't believe neither one of us mentioned, but fucking Rocky, of course. Like,
obviously.
He's great in Rocky.
Absolutely. So
apparently he was in Little Nicky as well. I didn't know that. Okay, sorry.
I didn't remember Little Nicky.
I didn't either. I just pulled him up on IMDb. I was like, oh shit, he did another one with Adam Sandler.
Yeah. All right, so his name is Carl Weathers. Let's call him. I'm trying to like mash up the letters in like Carl Weathers. Like, what other name can I make out of that? I don't know. What about?
I'm trying to think of something that's not
sure.
Right.
They wouldn't. No one would have known who Reacher was in the 80s.
Right. I mean, okay, no. I know this is just my bias for short names, but I just kind of like calling him Carl.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
Because I mean, obviously you and I have the long-standing joke of holy shit, he ate Carl, you know, from Oopai. But I mean, like, I don't know. I you know, we've brought this up before. I have a bad penchant for the 4-letter names. Carl works.
Carl works. Let's call him Carl. Let's keep it moving and keep it going. Okay, so Carl's going to be our kind of everyman action star guy. Again, he's a lumberjack, so he's kind of built, but you know, he's got the heart of gold, and he sees through Burke's bullshit. He's still working for him, but you know, you can tell that maybe he doesn't feel great about it, especially now that they're infringing on the territory of this endangered flower, right?
Right. I think we got a good basis for a start. We right away we show the, you know, Sasquatch family. We show them having a moment, like a character development moment, like they hold a funeral for their dead type of thing. We see this beautiful Sasquatch Eden, and then we meet the bad guys, and we meet, like, you know, Carl, he's working with the bad guys, but he doesn't like it. So I think what we need to do is have like a montage here of them cutting down trees, see animals scattering away. Like, you know, you see the deer running, the birds flying, and Harry's just kind of like, oh, like looking shocked, like, no, they're cutting down our home, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe he does like he points to his wife and kid, like, hide kind of thing. So we see them, like, they climb into one of the trees, and we see, like, up in the trees, there's all these, like, really dense branches, because we already saw Harry do that in the first one when he was hiding from Jacques. He was up in the trees, he had the birds on him. So
yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
We have his wife and son climb up into the tree, and they're hiding, and have Harry, like, picking up rocks and shit and, like, hucking them around the trucks, trying to scare him off, and I'd be like, what the fuck was that? Just there's
yeah, okay.
Or maybe like a rock falls out of the tree and hits the truck, and like, some big fucking birds around here. That maybe not fuck, because obviously PG-13, but these guys, they're not being scared away. So his tactics are kind of failing, just to show, like, he's gonna have to get tough later.
Yeah. Okay. So this could be interesting. Again, because we talked about this being an action movie where, like, his family is kind of in danger, and I mentioned a couple of movies where, like, they kind of, like, kidnap a family member. So let's do that. Let's have it that, like, Harry and, like, a couple of the other Sasquatches, they're throwing sticks and rocks kind of from the trees. We're gonna have some comedic moments of, some guys with, like, rocks bouncing off the top of their, like, hard hats or whatever, but we can kind of get serious where at some point maybe Harry's son, what's Chewbacca's son's name? Lumpy? Is that what they call him?
It was. I think so. I think it was Lumpy. One of them was called Itchy. I think that was the grandfather.
Oh, jeez. I don't know if I could do that. Let's just call the son, like, Fuzzy, Harry and Fuzzy, right? So right. Maybe, like, little Fuzzy's, like, you can see his face get all determined, like, oh, I could do it. I'm gonna take down these guys for my dad. And you see him, like, he picks up a rock and he chucks it at these guys. Maybe the stereotypical, like, Italian American guy I mentioned before. Maybe he just gets fucking clocked in the ear and, like, goes down hard. And you see all the other guys whip around, like, who the fuck threw that? And then there's Harry or Fuzzy, like, trying to, like, run for the cover of the woods. Like, oh no, like, they spotted me. Maybe he starts to, like, scale up a tree, but then gets surrounded by all the other lumberjacks, and now the lumberjacks are around the tree with their chainsaws. They know that there's, like, some kind of animal up in that tree, so they fucking maybe they stop and they're like, what do we do? Like, what the hell was that? Was that a bear? Was that a koala? Like, what the hell was that? Like, right. And maybe this is where we have Burke. We have Michael Ironside show back up and be like, what are you guys doing standing around? And they're like, I don't know. There's, like, a bear cub or something, and he's just like, cut the damn tree down. It'll run away, like, whatever. So the point is, they cut the tree down, but, Fuzzy doesn't run off. Instead, he gets, like, surrounded by the lumberjacks, and Burke is still there. And then suddenly he's just like, cha-ching, dollar signs in the eyes, like, holy shit, a Bigfoot. Like, I thought they'd be taller.
I like that. That's fucking awesome.
But anyway, the point is that now they have Harry's kid, and, like, maybe it's just sort of an accident, but they're like, oh my God, we found a Bigfoot. Burke's like, you got to keep it quiet, and maybe this is where, Leaf, the nerd guy, comes over again, and he's kind of explaining, like, it's an endangered lily, but we can't let, the authorities know we're going to be here. You guys are all going to be in trouble, for a violation of, like, the Endangered Species Act. It's like a federal crime, so you got, zip it, keep it to yourselves while we figure out what we're going to do. And right. They kind of, and then maybe, and I don't know if we want to have it, like, just be Fuzzy, or maybe there's other Sasquatches that get caught. But the point is that, like, they kind of take him back to wherever their base is, and they're kind of, like, keeping them under guard while they figure out, like, how do we cash in on the discovery of a lifetime while not getting busted for, poaching on federally protected land.
Right. Okay. So, all right, a couple things, man. You had the fucking lights are flying right now. So, all right.
Nice.
So I love the idea of Fuzzy. I keep wanting to call him Itchy, but I know it was Lumpy, but Itchy is just stuck in my head. So Fuzzy's like, he hucks the rock. They see him. He runs up. He climbs up the tree. I love the idea of him scampering up the tree. Now, two things. One, if Burke is used to illegally deforesting and doing shady shit, and an area where there's going to be heavy wildlife, he's going to have a tranq gun. He's going to have some kind of weapon, something to protect himself in his truck. So have him have, like, a big high-powered rifle, like with tranquilizer darts, all that. But so they do the whole thing you said. They chop the tree down. They surround the Bigfoot, do the whole like I thought he'd be taller. Like I love that joke. Have them like trank like or they don't know what to do at first. It's like sitting there going like like growling at him, and then Burke comes up to the circle with his gun. He just tranks it, and he's like, get back to work, get it in the truck. Have Harry's wife, like obviously Harry and the other, Sasquatches, they're all up in the trees too. And they're like shocked, but maybe Fuzzy was trying to climb that particular tree because his mom was in that tree. He was trying to get back to his mama. So when the tree hits and they trank her son, she just like jumps up out of the frickin', fallen brush of the tree, roaring. And Burke just like fires like a couple rounds into her, like knocking her out too. And he's like, hey, 2 for the price of 1. Get her in the truck, and have Harry just be like, like freaking out up in the trees, and have the other Sasquatches maybe like they grab him, like put their paws over his mouth, like you're gonna give us away type of thing, because they just saw these humans took out 2 of their own, and they don't know what happened, so they're a little scared, they're a little standoffish. Like I said, they're kind of peaceful creatures. They're not hardcore yet.
Yeah, so I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, to your point though, so they get them all in the truck, and Leaf is talking about, you guys are going to be in trouble. They're like, well, we gotta figure out, how do we make money on this while, not getting in trouble with the cops, like you said. So they take them back to the compound, the big like logging factory or whatever, and they cage up Fuzzy and his mama. And now they're trapped, and like Burke's trying to figure out like, who do we contact? How do we sell these? How do we become famous? So we're going to have like, he'll be doing his villainy while we can focus on both Carl and Harry, and kind of get the 2 protagonists together.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Okay. So let's have it be, Carl, like, of course he's going to be with the other lumberjacks, kind of carting off the 2 Sasquatches. They're heavy as fuck but they're gonna pick them up and winch them on the back of a truck and go lock them up, like you said. And let's have it be, since Carl's our POV, maybe Burke shoves the trank gun at him, or they have a couple of like trank rifles, and he shoves one to Carl, and he's like, you're on first watch. So back at like this base, we get Carl with a trank gun standing outside of a cage with the 2 Sasquatches, and you can tell he's conflicted. Like he doesn't want to fucking do this. Like he realizes that this is wrong. Maybe he brings them some water or something, right? Something that or maybe he's got, what would be cool is if earlier on, when we were having this conversation about the flowers and everything, maybe our stereotypical Italian American guy, when he was like, these flowers are pretty, look at this, Carl. Maybe he like puts one of them in Carl's pocket, like, like give you a little boutonniere,
Yeah.
And so now we see Carl look down, he sees the flower, and he hands it, to Mala, or whatever the mother is called. He hands it to her, sort of as like an offering, and she's afraid to take it, and so maybe he just kind of tosses it in the cage, but he sees little Fuzzy pick it up and eat it, and it's like they have a little bit of a moment, or it's like, okay, like this is a good human, even though he's standing there with a gun that obviously hurt them. Of course, this is after they would have to like wake up a little bit, obviously, for this moment to happen. But all the while, like now we have to have Harry go hardcore. Like this needs to be the moment where I feel like Harry's not going to be subtle, right?
No.
Yeah. So they're going to cart his family off. I feel like, the other Sasquatches are going to kind of be holding them back. Like, like Harry, don't hurt him, just, sort of out of caution. But at a certain point, maybe we see Harry, sitting, in the woods, chilling with the other Sasquatches, looking despondent, as they wouldn't be sitting around a campfire, but I'm picturing, like kind of sitting around in a circle, like, how Sasquatches, I don't know, they tell stories or console each other. And maybe after then we cut back to the hideout. We see Mom and Fuzzy like wake up and have their little moment with Carl, and then maybe at the end of it you hear the mom who didn't take the flower and is sad and scared. Maybe she does that wail, that big Sasquatch wail, and then Harry hears it from out in the woods, and then you see his face just like come over dark, like, oh fuck this, like I'm gonna get my family back. And then we cut back to the facility and you see Burke come out and like, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I gave you a trank gun for a reason. Like, you're gonna give away the secret to everybody. Like, quiet that beast down. And poor Carl's got to be like, oh man, I don't want to do this, but he's got a tranker. And then of course little Fuzzy's like, why'd you do that, mister? Like making Carl feel even more bad about it. So the point is, Carl's going to kind of turn on Burke eventually because we're really driving the knife at his heart,
Right, exactly. So it's just, I mean, obviously, I think this would be like the last straw for Carl, like, this ain't worth the money type of thing. So now he's trying to figure out a way to like, either sabotage from within or, maybe he leaves to go like tell somebody and we can introduce, what was it, Dr. Wallace? Oh, I forget his name. Wallace Wrightwood, was it? Yeah,
Wrightwood. Yeah. Maybe.
So we could introduce him because we have to have like the callback character from the first movie. Mm-hmm. So we could do the thing where it's like, maybe Carl is like, screw this. I'm no amount of money is worth this. And he leaves and he's like, he doesn't know where to go. Like, who do you talk to about a Bigfoot? Well, there's this guy with a Bigfoot museum that's, not far away. Like, start there. So have him like go and maybe he like talks to the doctor or Dr. Wrightwood and is just like, do you really believe in all this? Like, do you think, and have him kind of smirk and be like, oh, you wouldn't believe what I believe, like that kind of a thing. And then have him explain, that he knows where there are two Bigfoot being held captive and just have that like pale look of like shock on Wrightwood's face, but like, take me to them, like that whole, like, because he knows they're out there. So, they go out and he shows them that it's at the logging company and like, maybe they could be like, trying to figure out how do they take that down. And this is where we could have Harry join the party. So we have them like kind of on the ridge overlooking the logging company talking about how to shut him down. And then you hear boom, boom, boom coming up behind him. And Harry is pissed, and have Carl just be like, oh no. And if Ray would be like, oh no, Harry, it's me, and have him calm him down and like Harry would give Wrightwood a big old hug and have Carl be like, they're friendly, kind of like a little confused, a little unsure. And we could have the quick explanation. So the for the new audience and for the character of Carl, here's what happened in the first movie. Like, yes, Bigfoot exists. Yes, they're friendly. They're good. They're peaceful. They're vegetarian, that type of thing. And then have Carl be like, have a moment like, just like, I'm sorry, and like maybe like put his hand up to Bigfoot or to Harry and have him like grab his hand and, like kind of look eyes down, like he's not blaming him. He saw that he wasn't, the main guy doing it. And then we could have like, this is where they got to figure out how to storm the castle, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah. I like all of this. I'm spinning thinking like, man, how far do we want to go with the action? Because, so far we've had trank guns and I don't know that if we want to escalate that into like actual guns, during our big confrontation that we're kind of building up to. Because I feel like Burke wouldn't be above that, but at the same time, like, okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to second guess it. Let's just kind of see how we get there, right?
I think just a stipulation here. I think because we're going family friendly, I think Burke should be the only one that will use a real gun. I think we go Three Stooges on this. That cartoonish violence is okay. Realistic violence is where we draw the line, and only allowed to have a little bit of realistic violence being that of Burke using like a revolver. Like maybe we have him actually pull a real gun at some point. But I feel like Harry could use like clubs, logs, anything to like bonk the bad guy on the head, pick him up, huck him into the trees type of thing. Like he can show strength that would absolutely kill a person in reality. But it being a PG-13 movie and a family-friendly one at that, it's Three Stooges violence.
Okay, yeah, I'm down for that. Okay, so let's do it this way then. Yeah, let's, to your point, everything that you just said where, Carl kind of, he leaves, he sort of abandons the crew. But he can't just give it away, like, I'm out of here, guys, because, again, Burke's the kind of guy that would want to stop him. So,
Yeah.
and just to add a little bit more drama and like runtime to the movie, right? We should, after this whole sequence where we see, Carl, try to, comfort the Sasquatches, and then they wail, and Harry hears it, and like, he wants to, and he's gonna get all fucking pissed. Let's see Carl get spelled, right? Like I mentioned that, he was like, you're on first watch. So now another guy is gonna come up, and again, it could be our I keep saying our stereotypical Italian American. Let's just call him Louis, right? So Louis, right? Let's have it be like Joe Mantegna or someone like that, right? So he comes out to spell Carl off of his guard duty. So then, Carl's going to kind of go back to the break room. Maybe he's sitting there, like, just kind of like idly reading a newspaper. He's thinking like, oh, what am I going to do? In the paper, he sees an ad for the Bigfoot Museum.
Perfect.
And he's like, oh, perfect. Right. So he calls him up and he's like, so has anyone ever like got proof of Bigfoot? Like, what would you say if somebody had proof, kind of thing. And you see Wrightwood on the other side of the phone. At first he's playing him off like, yeah, whatever. Like, people bring me, the footprint case, what do they call them? Footprint impressions or whatever all the time, and blah, 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 blah. But again, I'm not good with the dialogue. At some point, Carl's going to kind of like, well, what if there were, two of them, and whatever. He kind of gives enough hints where Wrightwood's like, wait, this guy's serious, like,
yeah.
He's saying stuff that he wouldn't just make up. He was some random, person, who thought he saw a Bigfoot in the woods. So he's kind of asking these questions, and then they're like, well, maybe, Wrightwood, maybe he says something like, well, maybe somebody, who is into Bigfoot would want to get a beer with me, down at the handlebar, biker bar down the street or whatever, it's kind of like, it's kind of
out of the way.
Yeah, come meet me somewhere. But, maybe he'd have to bring some proof, or, a guy wouldn't believe him, whatever, kind of just for like a bit of business, right? So then you see Carl, he's got to kind of like sneak off, for a little bit of drama to the movie. We have a little bit of a stressful moment where he's trying to leave, maybe take one of the Jeeps or whatever they have at this like little base, maybe he does that thing where he like puts it in neutral and like jumps in without starting the engine and rolls it down a hill a little bit before he fires the engine up, because he's sneaking off. And then he goes off and he meets Wrightwood at the bar, and he tells, and then when they're face to face, he tells him like, look, man, like, this is what's going on, blah 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 blah. And then Wrightwood, believes him, and he's like, hey, do you remember, all that stuff in the papers about like the Bigfoot militia from like a year or two ago? Did that, whatever, that was real. And he tells the story of the Hendersons.
Let me cut in and add one wrinkle.
Please.
So when Carl calls Wrightwood, of course Wrightwood's going to be like, oh yeah, people bring me stuff all the time. I've seen fur, I've seen footprints. It's like, it's very rare that someone has concrete proof. Just kind of get it, try, because he's going to try to throw people off the trail because he knows that they're real. So what if Carl says something like, I can bring you a photo, and have him be like, okay, meet me, and he does the whole like, meet me, blah blah blah. So now we can add a nice tense moment where Carl has to go to like Leaf, who is like, our nerdy camera security guy, like all into like the details of their operation. He wants to get like, maybe they're of course they're gonna have a security camera on the cage, they're gonna be. Yep. So he wants to get a printout of that, that camera. So now he's going to have to distract Leaf like, oh, hey, man, I don't know. Burke really wants to see you. He seems pissed about something. Have Leaf be like, oh, shit, watch the cameras, Carl. I'll be right back. Have him print it. And now he's got to sneak out of the facility before Leaf gets back because, Burke's going to be like, I didn't ask for you. What the fuck do you want? Right. So now you do that whole sequence that you just said where he like sneaks out. He's got to like play it cool by the other guys, like, hey, what's going on, man? It's like, hey, Louie, I'll see you later. I'm going to grab a bite, so I'll be in the mess hall, that type of thing. Like, and then he gets outside, he takes one of the Jeeps, rolls it in neutral, gets down to the bottom of the hill, right as we see like Burke being like, I didn't ask for you. Where's Carl? Like, where did you leave him? And be like, oh, he's watching the camera, and him be like, you idiot. And then like we hear the car fire up. everyone is like on high alert now because they know Carl he turned on him. Like he's basically he's out. So now the guys are pissed and Burke is like out for blood. So then we do the whole thing where yes, he goes and he meets up with Wrightwood, and he just cuts right to the chase. He's like, "You Wrightwood?" And like, "Yeah." It's like, "So where's this?" And as he's saying like, "Where's this proof?" He just holds up the photo and he's like, "Put that away. Put that away." He's like, "Come with me." And they go outside and then they're talking and he explains the whole thing that you were talking about with the militia and the Hendersons and all that, and have, Carl be like, "We got to get them out of there. This isn't right." Like, "Show me where they are." Like we do that whole thing. And then, and then we lead up to our third act where we have them, the whole sequence I said with Harry comes lumbering up behind him. We have the tender moment between Carl and Harry, and the tender moment between Harry and Wrightwood. Nice. And have them kind of like, trying to tell Harry that he's in danger if he busts in there. And then we could, I don't know, we should have mentioned this at the start. When the loggers were cutting down that tree, I wanted to have somebody with like a red jacket or a red, like a red plaid button down or something, something like that, where it gets left behind, or like, it falls off in the struggle to get the Sasquatches on top and the trucks, and then have Harry like pick it up and like smell it and like, grunt and start following. But this is where we could have, and I kind of like it being a flannel, actually being a red flannel. We have them trying to explain the whole, like, you're in danger, you can't go in there, and have them just look at them real seriously, hold up the whole flannel, not just a shred of it, and tie it around his head like the Rambo bandana to show them he means business.
Oh, I love that. Now, of course, this is like a silly anthropomorphic character who somehow understood English and whatnot in the first movies. So you could totally see him doing that. Just be like, somehow he knows about Rambo.
Right, exactly.
If we wanted to explain it a little bit, like, I don't know, maybe, Harry's got like a cut on his forehead or something that he got earlier when he was like, trying to chase after the truck before the Sasquatches stopped him. And part of this like tender moment that, Carl and Harry could have is Carl could be like, "Oh, like, oh, you're bleeding. Like, we got to clean that up, like, let me help you, big guy." And then have Harry just be like, he grunts like, "No." And then he like takes this flannel and he wraps it around like a bandage, but it's like, oh shit, fucking Rambo.
I love it.
Oh man. Okay, so now they're gonna be like hanging out, like casing the joint. But of course, Carl gave himself away. So now, like, maybe they go up and they're hiding in like the tree line looking at the facility, and Carl's trying to explain to them where everything is, like where the cage is and all this. But then of course you see guys outside, and they get more guys with tranq rifles, and Carl like wasn't expecting that. Like, oh, like now they're all on high alert. We need a plan to get in there.
What if Carl tells them, like, look, like he explains to them where the cage is, explains how to get in there, like, Harry's going to need Wrightwood as a lookout because, Harry can't really hide for he's a giant fucking Sasquatch in an open field. Have Carl kind of give himself up. Like, what if he walks in, he's just like, don't shoot, I'm coming back, and have like Burke want to know what the hell, where did he go, who he told, like, so we could have this like back and forth happening on the inside where Carl's getting interrogated. Meanwhile, Harry's knocking out the fucking guards, and like Weathers or Wrightwood is like sneaking in, like, all right, it's all clear, like waving him on, and they're like breaking into the facility to try to break out, Harry's family while Carl's distracting the big bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and maybe Carl, I thought of this cool like little action scene I kind of want to do. So let's have Carl, like, maybe he draws a map on the back of like a napkin from the bar, right? He's drawn a little map for Wrightwood, saying, okay, so this is where the cage is and this is the door and blah blah blah. Yeah, to your point, like Carl's he's gonna surrender himself. He's gonna to distract Burke and Leaf, and then let's have Wrightwood like walk up like around the corner of the building and kind of like, quote unquote, accidentally, expose himself to the guards at like the door they're trying to get in. And the two guards, they pulled the Trent guns on him. Like, what are you doing here, old man? Like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I was just out for a walk in the woods and I got lost. And then you have one of the guards be like, he starts sniffing, like, he's like, oh man, do you smell that? And then of course, that's Harry. And then they turn around and you just see Harry like raw, and he grabs the back of their heads and like bops them together like coconuts, like boop, and then like they're both knocked out.
Perfect. I love it.
And then Wrightwood and Harry, like, they sneak in, and I don't necessarily need to coordinate, the whole or choreograph the whole motion through the building, but yeah, it's going to be Wrightwood sneaking around with Harry while Harry's going crazy, like roaring and smashing things. Wrightwood is like, getting like the security codes for the door or whatever. Maybe he's just kind of like, okay, we make a left and then a right, and then the whole way you see Harry behind him just like laying waste. Like you don't even really need to be careful,
Right.
But this, and then of course, they would be on high alert, and even though Carl is, sorry, they wouldn't be on high alert yet, but they will be, because even though Carl is distracting Burke and Leaf, Harry's going crazy. Burke and Leaf are going to start hearing crashing and smashing, like, oh, what the hell is going on? And this could be kind of a big facility. We never really figured out like what it is, but it could be some kind of like a processing plant for the wood, where they have big saws and big machines where they're cutting up logs and stuff, right? So it could be a pretty big place. With
that's kind of what I was picturing.
Yeah. So eventually Burke and Leaf are going to be like, what the hell is going on down there? And they're going to take off. And, Carl's like, well, the jig is up, and maybe at this point, he trips Leaf while Leaf is on his way out the door. And Leaf just like smashes like into the edge of the door as like Burke opens it. And he smashes like right on his nose and breaks his glasses in half. And he's knocked out, but Burke doesn't even notice. He just keeps on going with, again, like the one real gun that he pulls out of like his desk drawer. He's got like a handgun or something that he kept in there. But so now we get Carl kind of like loose again, like in the facility, to help. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Again, I don't necessarily need to choreograph this whole big sequence through the facility. What I want to do is I want to have Wrightwood and Harry get to the spot where the cage was. They bust into it, and oh shit, the cage isn't there. The room is empty. Now what are they going to do? Carl comes in like, what's going on? And I think it would be cool if you start to hear Fuzzy and the mom like moan and howl, and now Harry's gonna go crazy, smashing through the walls, chasing after the noise. He finally catches up to him. He sees the cages, and he just goes to like grab a cage when all of a sudden, like, the cages are moving because, oh shit, they're on the back of like a big flatbed truck, and Burke jumped in and he's taken off in the truck with the cages on the back. Like, fuck, like we missed him. We almost had him back, but Burke took off.
Before we get to that, because you went almost exactly where I was thinking, like with the same thing. The cage is gone, like Burke's on the run with him. But before that, I want to have a very ridiculous 80s action moment that we see in so many, not only in movies, but in video games. This is a big thing, where there's like a crowd of people, but they only fight one by one.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, again, this is a fucking logging facility with like big beefy fucking lumberjacks. So we're gonna have like a bunch of dudes, much like the Predator cast. So I mean, hell, we could even throw Jesse the Body Ventura and like fucking Duke. Why can't I think of his name? Oh my God, help me out here, Duke.
Bill Duke.
Bill Duke. Thank you, Bill Duke. God, why I could picture his face. And I'm like, I can't think of his fucking name. So we could even have those in there just for funsies, like just big dudes.
Oh,
so
heck yeah.
They're processing, like they're in the factory, like processing, like pushing the big logs on the fucking saws and all that, and have Harry like bust into the door, like pissed off, looking around for his family, and have all these guys be like, holy shit, look at that. And like as they come up, maybe have Harry like punch one of them and have him go flying across the facility, like, like a real and then be like, this thing wants to fight, so that they all surround him, and we gotta have Harry just beating the ever-loving shit out of all these muscle bound dudes. And again, cartoon
Oh,
violence. Go ahead.
yeah, dude. But this is where we gotta have Bill Duke. We gotta have fucking Brian James.
Yes.
Yeah, we got to have all these dudes in there, like these, the sort of second tier, 80s and 90s like action goons, fucking.
Al
Oh
Leon
God,
should be in there just
yes,
because.
yes. I was just thinking. I was like, wait, what's that guy's name? Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, I love this. They're all gonna like circle around and fight him, but while they're really doing is just like stalling him while Burke is getting the cages on the back of the
Exactly.
truck, right, and firing up the engine, and then they're gonna go after it. And don't let me stop you, like jump back in here, but
Yeah.
I want to give Louis a chance to like redeem himself too. Maybe like when Burke takes off in the flatbed, and then our heroes are left like, oh God, we just missed him, what are we gonna do? And then maybe Louis tosses Carl some keys, and he's like, Burke's Jeep, go, or whatever.
Yeah.
And right, just to kind of give him that little bit of a moment of like, I'm not a total douchebag, Carl, like, go help.
Well, maybe we could do that right here. Like we'll have Carl like come up. So while this fight's happening, like Wrightwood's just watching in like terror, like holy shit. Just like I'm picturing like a work floor, like a factory floor where these guys are fighting, and like Wrightwood's like standing right at the doorway, like before you go down the stairs to the factory floor, just watching in horror of all this. Have Carl catch up with him and just be like, Wrightwood, oh my God, like it's just like seeing Harry just pummeling these guys. And then we could have like maybe to your point with the redeeming moment, we could have one of the guys see Carl and like come up to hit him, like to sucker punch him from behind, and have Louis bop him on the head with something like something breakable, like a vase or something, just shatters over his head. And it's like, Carl, it's like, Burke's getting out of here with the the Sasquatch. Here's the keys to his Jeep. You gotta go, like that type of thing. But have that like be at the very end of the fight, like after Harry beat the hell out of everybody. But one thing I want to have happen is like have, he's slugging dudes, he's throwing guys, like people are running in one at a time. And it's just like this 360-degree, like camera zoom around as he's just like popping guys over machinery and all that. And then have like the one big dude, have like, I don't know, like a Lou Ferrigno type, like come walking up, like punching his fist together, just like in jeans with suspenders, like the overall type of thing.
Yes.
Just like come here, you overgrown ape, that type of thing. Like come at him and have Harry just grab him by the legs and do that thing from like Conan where they spin around and he's just like spinning on his heel, so it'd be like very cartoonish. And the guy's just like like screaming, and then he throws him into the crowd, knocking over like 10 other guys.
Yeah, he's just like bowling with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we do the scene with Carl and Louis and all that, and have Wrightwood be like, Harry, we gotta go, and have Harry like go running after him.
Oh yeah, of course. And then it's an action movie, so you got to have a chase scene, right? Like a high-speed chase. So you got Burke in like the big flatbed truck with the cages on the back, and then you've got Carl and Wrightwood driving the Jeep with Harry like just jumps on the back of it, and hell, maybe it was like a soft top and he just smashes through the back of it, and he's standing up on the back seat, just like waving his arms like King Kong as they're like racing like down the hill or whatever.
Doing like the siren howl that he did in the first one.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, dude, that's perfect. Okay, hold on. The siren howl just gave me an idea. So they're chasing down the side of the mountain. We could extend this chase as long as we want. Have like the cage sliding back and forth, like it's almost gonna tip. Maybe they're on like a cliffside and there's like water down below, because again, it's a processing plant for the logging company. There would need to be water there. So so they're racing down this hill, and it's like there's a couple of dangerous moments where the cage like hits the side of the flatbed and like tips and almost like goes down the cliff, and Harry's howling with rage. Well, we haven't seen the other Sasquatches, right? So what if when Harry starts howling like that, we start seeing logs get rolled down the side of the mountain to block the path of Burke? So like Burke slams on the brakes and like crashes into the logs, and then we see Harry like come running up, and he like grabs the cage out of the back of the truck, like pulls it out, rips it open just like it's fucking paper mache, just like he's full beast mode at this point. Just like rips the lid off, lets his family out, and they hide behind him, and he's just like staring at Burke with like just like he's gonna murder him, like that super anger, and have Burke laying there like like all panicked. Maybe he like picks up his gun like he's gonna shoot him, and Harry just grabs the gun and crushes it. Just like, nope, that ain't happening.
Yes.
And then I want to have like, there has to be a silly moment because Harry's not going to kill. He's good. So how is he going to take out Burke? Is he going to like pick him up like fucking Melvin style, like the super wedgie, like grab him from the back and throw him from the road into the center of the lake? Like,
yeah. Okay. So,
or we could have him do something like weird, like literally bend him over his knee and start fucking spanking him with the giant Bigfoot hands.
Yeah, I kind of like this idea of like the super wedgie, right?
Yeah.
So and we have to have this tension where Burke is like fumbling for the gun because like the truck it crashed or got messed up or whatever, right? So it's like, oh no, like is he gonna get the gun up in time? And Harry gets there first and like crushes the gun, and maybe he crushes his hand at the same time,
Right.
And and then maybe Burke is screaming at him. It'd be funny if Harry was screaming at him and Burke, instead of being scared, he's just screaming back like it's like it would be a kind of a funny moment of like a little scream off, and then eventually Burke tries to to hightail it, so he turns to run. Harry grabs him, fumbles a little bit, grabs him by the pants or the underwear, and just picks him up. And then you see Burke do this comical face where his eyes cross, and he's like, oh,
Yeah, the high pitched scream while cupping himself, like
Yeah. And maybe Harry just holds him and then gets one final scream, like right in his face, and the scream that like reverberates off the mountainside. Like, oh, you want to have a screaming battle? I'll show you. And then because it's a comedy, his eardrums aren't going to pop. Instead, he's just going to be all dazed and and kind of out of it from the noise. And then Harry's going to literally hang him on a tree. Somebody will come and take care of this loser because he's going to go grab his family and make sure that they're okay.
I think we should have, instead of the being dazed, like the howl, he should finally just be like, and pass out completely and just go limp, and have Harry hold him like, and then just then hang him on the tree like, okay, I'm done with him now.
Exactly, right.
I love it.
And then Harry's going to embrace his family, and of course Wrightwood and Carl, and hell, maybe Louis is racing down the mountain. Maybe he's got a fucking bicycle or something. Like, hey, you guys okay? Just because again, it's like an 80s comedy. Everybody has to have their final little moment. Like, oh, they're okay.
Right.
And then of course the other Sasquatches are going to kind of come out of the woods, and they have the big moment where and of course Carl and Louis are like, oh my god, and again I can't do the dialogue on the fly, but Wrightwood's got to he's got to convince them that you guys know that you can't ever say anything, right? So we can pick here. Do we want to have him pull on their heartstrings, you guys can't say anything because Harry's a family man and blah 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 blah, but then actually not even a choice, we'll just do both. Maybe at the end of it he's like, and don't forget the felony of logging on federally protected land. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Right. Yeah, no, I think what we should do, I kind of have a really fun idea for Louis and Carl here. So we do the whole ending final, everyone's got their final jokes, their little commentary thing. I think it would be fun to have Louis make a comment after he meets Harry formally, it's like, hey, your feet ain't so big. My cousin Marco, he got bigger, just do some kind of stupid, comment like that. But have Harry do the big cheesy grin and all that. And then we have Wrightwood tell him now you understand how important it is to protect this secret. The people can't know they're out here, otherwise they'll never be able to live in peace. They will always be hunted. They'll always, they do that whole tearjerker, tug on your heartstrings, protect the forest, protect endangered species speech. Now we cut 3 months later. All right. We see all the area that has been deforested. We see Carl and Louie like doing like they now own a like a conservationist society type thing, like where they have all these people voluntarily planting new trees. So they're out there like calling like, oh yeah, let's get another row over here. And like we have the ending moment where it's like, Carl's wiping his brow and he looks up and we see like in the sunny, tree line, we see Harry and his family watching, and then we see like other Sasquatches like popping up, and then just kind of Harry waves, and then they all like hide back in the bushes again.
Oh yeah, and we like fade to black and play the happy music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I want to insert one little thing.
Yeah.
It should be 3 months later, and we cut to George Henderson in our little like John Lithgow cameo that he came in. He came in. He did one day,
Yes.
And we see him, driving with his family in their station wagon, up through the woods, kind of like mirroring that first scene from the original movie. They're driving up the woods, and they pull up to this area, and again, and you see this big sign, and it says something, like I don't know, it wouldn't be Mount Rainier, but whatever the name of the area is, it's like the spotted strawberry lily, nature preserve or whatever it is, and they get out, and it's and then you see Carl and Louie there, and they were like planting trees or whatever. And then the Hendersons, they all get out and they put on like work gloves, and they start like chipping in, like they're there for their like weekend like volunteer session, And maybe Sarah, the daughter's like, Dad, why do we have to come up here every Saturday and volunteer our time to plant trees? I could be at the mall with Steven, like.
Of course.
But that would be like the expository dialogue that would kind of explain what they're doing. Like they're all up there like volunteering time, and they're gonna like replant the trees and replant the flowers. Yeah, and then you kind of hear, maybe you hear a little holler, and then they all look up at the tree line, and there's Harry and all the other Sasquatches. They're all waving to him, and then we do that thing where like the Star Wars wipe, where it like wipes to like a pinhole in the middle of the screen, and then happy 80s music, and it's like like you get like Randy Newman to do a song or something.
Bigfoot's got no peoples around.
Oh man, we need Josh Hibbert to like write that song for us. Josh, if you hear this, you gotta like write it and do it on the next Count Creepyhead. We need a Randy Newman song about Harry and the Hendersons and big feats.
and of course, he does perfect Randy Newman impression, because that guy has 1,000 voices in his head. I swear, it's crazy how many impressions he can do.
Oh man, dude, this was fun. We got there, man. This is awesome.
I did not think a family-friendly action movie would be this fun to make, but like, again, like after having just watched Harry and the Hendersons, I'd sit and watch this. Like that was a fun, feel-good movie, and I feel like we kind of got in the same vein with this while having, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles era violence. Like picture Secret of the Ooze. Picture the fight scenes in that.
Yeah.
Like I love that era of action violence where it's just so cartoonish and silly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could pull off like keeping this PG rated, like just like you said, with that same type of violence, because it's very comical. And even though we have all these, goons, and we have hardcore Harry, being like Rambo, but like it's all sort of like slapstick and funny, and it's a heartwarming story at the end of the day. So yeah, I think this is fun. I like this whole concept of Harry not being a fish out of water like it was in the first one, but instead like having somebody invade like his turf, and it wasn't the Hendersons and their family drama, but it was his family drama. So I think it's a really cool sequel in the sense that we took the same themes and we just kind of flipped them around and showed the other side of it, which is a great way to write a sequel.
Well, that's the thing. We kind of followed the sequel rules, like the traditional stereotypical, like we want to mirror certain things, even right down to the fact that we didn't have like, the big names come back for like their main roles. Like we did all right, keep one of the characters from the first one, have them be a main player and nobody else. Like we saw that so many times in the 80s where it's like, oh, this is the sequel about the friend. Yeah.
Yeah, the friend. Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool too because it kind of fits right in the continuity because, we didn't mention it earlier when we were doing our trivia because I wanted to like just get into the story, but there actually was, like a lot of 80s comedies, there was a TV sitcom spinoff of Harry and the Hendersons that aired, believe it or not, for 3 seasons, 72 episodes.
Which is crazy because as I told you when we were talking before the show, I forgot that even existed until I pulled up IMDb and or not IMDb, my Google search Harry and the Hendersons, and I saw the TV show as one of the picks, and I'm like, wait, there was a TV show? And then I looked at it and saw the cast and went, holy shit, I did watch some of this.
Yeah, and like a lot of those, types of TV sitcom spinoffs, none of the cast in the movie really came back. And in fact, even Kevin Peter Hall, he did come back, but not for the whole run of the show. He was only there for part of it as Harry. But yeah, George was played by Bruce Davison, who I primarily know from the X-Men movies as Senator Robert Kelly.
Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys who pops up in so many like different TV shows and movies, but I can never remember like any big roles for him. It's always just like, oh yeah, that guy that was in that thing. Like he played a bad doctor, it's like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's never like leading man.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you recognize him. He's one of those actors who's like, it's that guy from that thing. That's
Exactly.
But I remembered that show. I do remember seeing 1 or 2 episodes and hating it. And in my memory, I thought of it as like, oh, it was a total bomb and it like got canceled immediately. But no, it ran for a while, So, I know you always defend the Weird Science TV spinoff, but man, there were so many of these that were not good. Like the Ferris Bueller TV show.
Oh, God. and I will say this about the Weird Science TV show. I definitely recognize that it's bad, but for some reason, man, I loved it. Like,
yeah.
And I was going to say the thing that I always think of, was it Bruce Davison? Was that his name? No, I'm forgetting his name that we just said. Yeah, Bruce Davison.
Bruce Davison.
I always think of him from the Tales from the Crypt episode. I know I'm going to have the name wrong. It's the episode about soap. He was a soap maker, and it was all about like the acceptable fat content in a bar of soap because it used animal tallow. And then his wife kills him by dumping him in a vat of soap and then makes bars of soap out of his body and then washes herself with it. But the acid content was too much and it melts her. It's 99 and 44/100% pure horror. That's it. I just looked it up.
Yeah, I just looked it up too. That's why I was like, oh wow, because I'm looking at stills and I'm like, oh my god, I do remember that now. I never in 1,000 years would have like thought of that episode, but as soon as you mentioned it, I'm like, yep, I remember that one.
That's the main place I remember, because I remember seeing him in a ton of other things, but like when I see his face, I immediately go back to that episode.
It's always got to come back from Tales from the Crypt. It always comes back to horror.
always.
But
anyway.
Yeah. But this was not horror. This was a family-friendly romp through a PG-13 rated action movie. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, we got the Rambo headband in there. We got the hardcore Harry. You know what we forgot to do though, Mike? We forgot to say, this time it's personal.
That's true, because that's one of the things I pitched you at first, like hardcore Harry. This time it's personal, even though it was like I had no story. I was just like that tagline, because it reminds me of like all the Family Guy skits of where they have like Jesus come back. It's like there was the Passion of the Christ 2. This time it's personal. I think.
It's such a great tagline. Oh man! Of course, that's also the tagline of Jaws 4, which is an amazing movie that everyone should watch, because Jaws 4 is fucking awesome.
Between you and one of my coworkers, I'm always hearing how good that movie is, and I hate it.
I'm gonna keep telling you over and over again. You know what else is a good movie, Mike? The Last Jedi.
Oh, you! I do have to say, I did hear a little bit of feedback on that episode. I didn't hear a ton of feedback, but I did hear a little bit where I was told by 2 different people that they hadn't thought of some of the things I brought up, and they're like, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that now. So I was able
no.
to ruin it for a few.
Tip the scales. That's okay. Most fans already hate it, so that those scales are already tipped way over on one side anyway.
That's true. That's true.
But anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's get out of here. We'll remind the audience to check us out, of course, as always, RaisedByRentals.com and at RaisedByRentals on the social media platforms. And also check out RadPantheon.com to check out a super team of podcasters, artists, musicians, and all sorts of creative friends supporting each other and helping to spread the word about rad stuff. Go and check out some of the projects there at the Rad Pantheon. What about you, Mike? What do you got going on?
Well, at the time of this recording, I'm not actually sure what episode of the Boogeyman's Closet will be the newest one, but we finished up Tourist Trap, and we have our buddy Dawn's birthday episode coming up. So by the time you hear this, that episode, I believe, will have already come and gone. But yeah, we're not doing our normal format of picking a bunch of movies ahead of time, but I do know we're doing Three from Hell and Long Legs pretty soon. So depending on when you hear this, one of those might be out. And of course, there's the ever-present Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash, where three grown man-children bitch about pop culture and talk about Muppets.
And toys. Sometimes it's a toy podcast.
Sometimes, yeah, we at least our weekly gains, like what we buy each week, are toys. Our show and tell segments.
Definitely go and check that out. And once again, thanks to everyone for tuning in. If you had fun with us, drop us a line, leave us a comment, leave a podcast rating. Let us know what you think we should improve next time. And with that, I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we have to return those videotapes. Raised by Rentals is a member of the Rad Pantheon Network. Visit radpantheon.com to support rad stuff. The theme music is Forbidden Fruit by Velvet Bethany. You can purchase music and learn more at velvetbethany.com.
Wandering around in the forest of life. Got no friends, full of trouble and strife. You're gonna need someone to get you through. Oops, you're friends with Bigfoot. Wandering around, cutting down trees. Kidnapping people just as you please. Riding in cars, not making a sound. Oops, you're friends with Bigfoot. Bigfoot's a Bigfoot with a heart as big as his feet. Bigfoot's a guy who likes eating big piles of meat. Bigfoot's a friend of me and a friend of you. 'Cause he's friends with everyone, 'cause his heart's as big as his feet. Oops, we're friends with Bigfoot. Oops, we're friends with Bigfoot. You can't go in the woods without making friends with Bigfoot.